I have a little bit of a different democracy lining up, but a couple of days ago, I became privy to a news story that has disgusted me for as long as I have been bothered, or rather privy to it. And it was the fact that you had a vote at the start of this month where 87 senators in this era of Trump resistance and the people are different, the politicians are so not alike, that decided to get together in a little black room and vote to give the military 717 billion. Now, after being made aware to this, I spoke out about it. I talked about my problems with at length. The fact that none of the news organizations said anything was also bothersome to me. But what really struck a chord with me and what really annoyed me the most was that I thought about why people didn't react to this. I tried to kind of rationalize in my mind what was upsetting me the most. And I had an epiphany and I said, senators do nasty and evil things all the time and in the dark that they decide to not put on TV because these networks are actually bought out to, play the game of shh when it comes to certain votes. What upset me was the fact that it seemed the only people who could pay attention to this that I knew weren't inclined to go and look this stuff up. So when I would share it on social media, when I would go and mention this among peers and other individuals in the contemporary era, I got one of two responses, and either "oh, that's so horrible," with the person kind of just remarking to it as something that was one day bad, the next day whatever, um, or it was followed by a defense. People who were trying to rationalize this and make it seem like it was okay. Reed O'Donoghue, I hope you don't think I'm bad. I have no opinion on that. You can feel whatever way you want. I don't see you in a negative light. But what I wanted to bring attention to is the fact that it seems whenever you talk about something that is not directly having to do with the person, there is this tendency to just write it off and subscribe to throwing it under a brush or under the bush. So, for example, if I were to sit here and talk about, you know, the ways I've been mistreated by females, a lot of people don't tune into that so they can hear uh, my struggle or issue, just because they like to hear stuff that's happening to me or want to hear about my past. They're tuning in because they can resonate with the idea of having a group of people who claim to be different or claim to have differences, um, and in some cases obviously do the exact same thing when it comes to this one particular category. And I don't bemoan them for checking that out. I just wish that there was an ability to empathize with others. You see, I will not be screwed one way or the other if that 717 billion is not matriculated to me. Um, but I know there are plenty of people in my state of California, in other states that could have used that. I've told you about the fact that student loan debt is 1.5 trillion. That the every other that only half the families in the U.S. or half the people in the U.S. can afford a $1,000 emergency. There's loads of statistics I can throw out here to support my claim that those funds could have benefited the people who are screwed. But ever so often, I find myself trying to find new avenues to articulate this information, and more recurring than not, I see groups of people who will literally sit there and will still cling to these same ideas that you called yourself trying to disprove. So, for example, if you go on Twitter and you look at a lot of Trump or whoever else that's in political stuff's tweets, let me say a little bit Envoy, you will see people who will write, "Oh yeah, blue wave coming to resistance to Democrats." We're talking about a lot of things. The lack of ability to pay attention is the major topic here. But there are a lot of people who will say the Democrats, they're coming for the Republicans. They're gonna get them. Yeah, 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 yeah. And then I've actually responded to some of these people and I say, wait a second. This video I made on Saturday about this 717 billion. There wasn't 10 Democrats that voted for that. There weren't 20. There weren't 30. There were 40. There were 40 Democrats that got with their little, supposed opposite of mine Republicans, um, and decided to back this measure. And yet I'm still getting told by these people who live in almost a philosophical la la land, that these differences are, actually there, that they're present, that, you can go after one party for one thing and suddenly the other party won't, isn't doing the exact same thing. Like that just goes out the window for them. Even if you mention this vote, which I did over and over again. You can actually go on Twitter and type in 717 billion. Just those words alone, you'll just see me posting after over and over and over and over again. It drove me crazy just thinking about that huge chunk of money. Again, 717 billion just scrubbed from every regular person and given to the military, which already accounts for most of our discretionary spending. But that's whatever. Let me say hello to Brought Vulture and Envoy. But as I was going on this Twitter tirade, and it is loads and loads of messages. There is a whole backlog of those things. I was involved with speaking to a couple of people on there and on Instagram, these other forms of social media. And the only person I got to respond to me on Instagram, who, and by the way, I didn't come to them, so it's not like I went over to some Trump supporter and I said, "Hey, I want you to denounce him because of yada yada yada." He comes on my stuff and says, "It is smart and wise for the military to spend, or for the Senate and the House to give 717 billion to the military." And I didn't even I responded back in disgust and just left it there. I'm gonna read what Envoy wrote in a moment, but I then go over to Twitter, and I get about maybe 5, 6 responses, and the one that stuck out the most to me was the person who said they should have cut 17 billion, which would leave it at just 700 billion, and give that to the impoverished areas or people that need it. I thought to myself, because again, we're talking about 717 billion. How the hell out of that amount are you going to take not even what, a tenth of it, and say, "Oh, this is what we can use for actual people, and we'll just keep giving the rest for this empire that already has loads and loads of money"? They really said that, and I sat there in disbelief. And I guess I've gotten to a point now when I get these comments, I don't even take them seriously. Like, I have the only comment on the 717 billion video is a person who's just writing something to boost his own agenda about sterilization and the need to divest from having a family and all other nonsense and worthless platitudes. And I really, I don't have patience to respond back to it, at least in typing, because I know it's just brick walls being lunged my way over and over. Envoy says, when it comes to politics, and I hear more and more of the left's rhetoric, the liberals, SJWs, feminazis, I find myself toward the right more. LOL. Right now, I'm pretty much in the middle. No, look, I'm not saying this has to be an alignment of political views at all. But what I'm getting so pissed off and sick about is the fact that you have constituents across all of these different states, whether it's my state, whether it's anywhere in the South, just everywhere. And I guarantee if you went up to a majority of those people, I would say maybe 98, 99%, they didn't hear anything about this vote. And I guarantee if you went up to most of those people, they're armed with some way of getting on the internet, some way of being able to find out this information for themselves. Only reason I knew about it is because I watched people on YouTube who talk about various things relating to news, and they actually go and look for the information. They go and check these things out. They don't just sit there, watch the talking box, and go, "Well, I guess that's all the news for today." It doesn't take much to learn about this stuff, but it does take a wanting to do that. And I guess what I'm trying to convey to you is when I posted this message, and it wasn't the same thing, but I actually had to like change it up over and over to avoid being considered spam. Um, I must have posted the number of 717 billion maybe 100 to 200 times in the last 2 days, and I can only account for maybe 5 or 6 responses on that. And this wasn't, just like, oh, you go to some random rapper's page and here I am talking about something political. I'm speaking about the fact that I went on the pages of various senators who voted for this on their newest tweet. When people were responding, I'd respond back with this information, and very few seem to get it. Then the ones that always seem to respond are just there to, fulfill their own agenda. As I told you with the guy who said only cut 17 out of 700, and that'll help. Or that's the correct way to divest that number. But in the case of this other person, I mentioned to him that you had these Democrats vote Republicans because he's on his crap about, oh, the parties are so different. But I go and tell him about this, and his response is, yeah, I bet some of those Democrats are in red states and they felt pressured. I'm like, California's not a red state, you dingbat. Ugh, a red state. Listen, if 40 senators from one party vote for anything, it's not from pressure of needing to be like the other. It just isn't. It's them being lazy and not wanting to take a stand on anything. Okay, Brought says, I'm always neutral, never give, never take. Um, I'm trying to figure out what you mean by that. Whatever. I just don't understand how you can have all these people who are in these, screwed up circumstances. And it feels like none of them ever take the time to just. And I'm not saying one person can't change any of this stuff. They can make a difference, but not be the ultimate reason why it gets vindicated. Just like I could spam Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the different websites with messages about the 717 billion. And unless the people vote, whoever voted for it out of office the next cycle, it didn't really change anything. But what I really hate is the fact that you don't have the outrage that the public should have. Think about it. You're living in this state where you have all these poor people, and your representative votes to give the military, a faceless entity, this large sum of money that could feed, bathe, and clothe every single person in your state, and you don't call them about it. You don't have a protest in front of their Senate office. You don't telephone them and ask why are they doing this. I called one of my senators about it. Um, it ended up being fruitless because the person who was representing them couldn't tell me anything about the measure even after I gave them the name of it and told them where what it was. But again, it goes back to this idea that the people who are involved with screwing things up don't have to worry about reprisal for what they do. The only one who can do something messed up and not get away with it in the eyes of the public is the president. Whoever the president is will always have the most scrutiny, will always be the only person who really gets any kind of scrutiny. And it's really sad because you have all these people who are just they refuse to pay attention to it. When I spoke up to my individuals in real life or just in person, I mentioned, and I don't know what Music Fiend is harping on about, whatever. I mentioned this measure to them, and most only reacted with, wow, that's messed up. But it was never, are we going to vote Feinstein out in November? Are we going to protest her and say, hey, go for the other guy? At least he didn't vote for this. Which is another thing. I actually have a list of all the Democrats in the House who voted for this that I was going to circulate today. But I sat back and I said, how many people in these districts are really going to care? How many people are actually going to say, you did this really evil, egregious thing. We need you out of there. None of them, except for maybe two or three. I mean, I got to a point where I said I could go and knock on the door of every single person in my city, and they would still not shift their vote or not want to vote if they don't already. Envoy says a sad state of affairs. Yeah, and the people but this is what I want you to understand, Envoy. When I made the video on Saturday, I said something to the effect of, I would rather you get screwed over by these representatives and know that you're getting screwed over. A lot of these people are unaware, or if they are, they can't specify what things that person has done to mess them to screw them over. They're not willing to take the time and get a list of reasons for why there should be a mandate on whether this person can stay in office. Envoy says, think about it. We have so much information. I'm subscribed to different political channels. and try and keep informed. It's not hard watching these 5 to 15 minute clips to be informed, but people don't want to be informed. They want to follow their friends or a trend. It's annoying. I mentioned that in the same video. I said that if I had made a music video called 717 billion, where all I did was do this and hear some random loud nonsense in the background and somebody cursing about the funds, um, it would get way more views because that's what people watch. They're into that. You turn your brain off and throw your head around. Or if it's something about what some uh, fugly chick decided to do to me, both of those would get more attention. Can cover load of content, yeah, but if they're not, if loads of people don't tune into it, it's not effective. I could make 4 to 5 videos about the senators who did this or more. Because also the other thing was that I quickly found myself overwhelmed because as I'm going on the page of some of these senators, and I'm looking at the list right now, we're talking about 87 different people that one person has to respond to and go, hey, don't vote for this person or don't support this person because they voted for this and this is bad because of that. I, it's too much, and I know that you're not going to get maybe more than 1 or 2 other people who will actually sit there day after day and just keep sending a link of, the vote, how the senator voted, and also a video explaining why it was bad. So it becomes tiring. Important to understand how backwards the country can be. You're about to explain. Uh, it's not that. Wait a second. Music Fiend says not even that many videos to get informed as well. Yeah, but you have to understand, people find the most arbitrary of reasons to ignore content. I had a guy who complained about a 12-minute video when he's probably watched 2-hour movies with regularity since he's been alive. And it's not like you have to see these in the theater. You can click on it, stop playing after like 2 3 minutes, come back, play another 5 or 6. It's not hard. People make a ruckus when it comes to presidential elections, but the local elections are what matters. They make the difference in your town or city and in your state as well. I agree with that. Again, you're preaching to the choir. The problem is when you go. I might do a stream like that where I just go on, like, show you all of the things that happen on these different social media sites, because I think it would be really interesting to see just the back and forth of me having to go and write all this stuff to these different people and it feeling so ineffective. Um, and what's even more disturbing is the fact that when I did the Twilight Zone, which was literally me talking about this same issue with some other stuff kind of thrown in and mixed there, it got more views based off its title alone, like 10 or whatever. But my point is, it feels like you have to be disingenuous to get people to click something. Like, people complain about clickbait. This is what I don't get. But if there's an important issue that the title alone won't sell you on, what else is the person supposed to do? Okay, Music Fiend says people watch the entire series of animes instead of getting informed. Well, look, nothing's wrong with watching a whole show, but you can squeeze news in there too. Envoy says honestly, it feels like the thirst of knowledge is gone amongst the youth sometime. I have to admit, when I went on these pages and was responding to these senators on Twitter, I kept seeing all these people who look like they're in their 40s or 50s. So I wouldn't say that that's wrong, Envoy. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying based off what I've seen. One of my closest friends is a film critic and he's barely informed. You'll notice that a lot of people who are sophisticated on a particular thing when it comes to something else, not so much. Envoy says, well, my issue is this. If you're not into politics, fair enough, but don't complain when legislation and policies get passed. You had the opportunity to make a difference. Exactly. You know what's really crazy? Don't even get on that, Envoy. I don't feel like dealing with them anymore. I mean, we've already talked about the problems with that group, and it's like, why even bother? But I will read your comment. Music Fiend says not only that, don't complain when society is a certain way because politics completely governs, and guess what? Laughs his behind off. There's no point. Stuff. Oh yeah, yeah. Again, good points, but just you have to understand. We live in a world now where it's like it's bad to have a position that's different from someone else that you can actually back with facts. So, for example, a lot of people who will get mad at me for saying the Democrats and Republicans are the same won't challenge the fact that literally every single Republican except for two and every single Democrat except for eight or seven voted for this 717 billion. They won't. No one will get mad at that. They won't. They will get pissed at the statement. That comments of them being the same, but not the vote. And they sure as hell won't get mad at the Democrat that made them look bad by voting the same way the Republicans did. People say stuff doesn't change, but if we galvanize together as a group of collective, oh yeah, things only work when it's a large sphere of people trying to shift them. Why do you think these wars are won by armies and not a single guy going around throwing a rock? You have to get loads and loads of people to make a change on pretty much anything that affects a community or a population. I could let me tell you put it to you like this. I could go. There are 39 million people in my state. I could go and knock on the door of every single one of them, and that would be over the span of like 80 or 90 days before this election cycle, and that would be more ineffective than people like 100,000 calling up various residents of the state and saying, "Hey, I want you to vote Feinstein out because she voted for this." People say stuff doesn't change. Oh, which has contributed to the look. I already told you I'm this in disillusion with both parties. The Democrats are clowns and the Republicans are buffoons. And I sometimes think I'm even stupider for living in a world where people actually still see differences between them. I mean, for God's sake, we're looking at this Supreme Court nominee, Kavanaugh, and you have all this crap about. Oh yeah, I agree, Jackie. You have all this crap about Feinstein. We need to get his records to know how he voted on issues. And I thought to myself, wait a second. Uh, don't you guys vote along party lines every single time there's a Supreme Court nominee? Like they had Hatch, for example, who was talking about the same tired tactics of the Democrats when it comes to these nominees, and then we found out, or someone screenshot the fact that every single for the last 20 plus years, every single Supreme Court nominee that was nominated by a Democrat, he is opposed. And I'm supposed to believe these are honorable, principled, members of Congress. Give me a break. Envoy says a trickle down effect when the youth are no longer interested in politics. It does raise red flags because sooner or later these young Americans are going to be governors and senators without the experience of understanding politics. Well, yeah, but here's the other thing. They're not even just that, it's the fact that they're going to be around in the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're going to have to make the shift from thinking these politicians are helpful or they're just whatever to understanding why they are the way that they are. Like how many of them don't know about Citizens United? How that was, counted as free. It's counted as free speech that corporations can bribe you. That why that vote was that controversial. How many of them know that both parties voted for this 717 billion military fund, except for like 10 people? How many of them know that? I guarantee not only do they not know that now, they probably won't know it in another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years because they're not trying to learn it. Funny, we all should be aware that these politicians do want to line their pockets, lol. Yeah, but you have to understand, Envoy, there are members of Congress, a very small number of them, I probably can't even count them on two hands, that do not do this. So I know it's not everybody, but how many of them are going to know who's good and who's not, or at least who's not bought out and who's not? That's the better question. And again, it stems from the fact that they will have a 1% attention span of seeing a title or some story that all their friends are talking about, and only getting interested in it if it's popular or if they get tricked into clicking on it and then they hear somebody talk about it very quickly. I think it'd be more effective if I just put like as the title, uh, "Big Booty Prostitute Arrives in my home" or whatever, and it's like a screenshot of some woman in like a doorway. and then you click the video, and it's, you know, like a minute long, and it's me speaking very quick, so quickly about, a couple of days ago, 87 senators voted for the 717 billion defense fund before. You have to speak this so quickly, because when they click that, they're gonna think, oh my god, oh, I can't wait to hear about this story, and then they get something else and they get off there. Yeah, I'm sure it would, Cortez, because that's the attention span these people have. Anything that matters gets completely ignored, and then anything that, you know, is just about run of the mill, day to day nonsense, suddenly, oh my God, national affair, the microwave era. No, Envoy, that's why I did the Twilight Zone, because it genuinely feels like I'm in this bizarro world where everything is upside down and topsy turvy. You know, having a good job and staying in shape, and being able to enunciate apparently doesn't cut it when it comes to attracting people, or at least the opposite sex anymore. Even if we know it did in the past. You know, having an interest in, you know, a certain topic that goes beyond other people on average is suddenly a bad thing if it doesn't attract the opposite sex to you. These are themes that I've seen being pushed, and they're so weird and disturbing that it does feel like it's not even, like, it's not real. That I'm just gonna wake up one day and we're gonna find out that this was all some joke. That people didn't actually think this way. That I drank one too many or something. That that's what it feels like. That just the more and more the more things that happen, the more I become convinced this is like a joke. Businesses, let me see. Even in business, have you noticed world philosophy, philanthropy is getting thrown around now? All because they don't care about the well-being of other organizations unless they can make money. Yeah, that's why corporations are parasitic in a lot of ways. So I agree, but it feels so. I mean, I do sometimes actually just question why even bother. Like, why bother trying to inform people about this topic in real life? Why sharing it online? Because I feel like if I don't speak about this or mention this in every single video I do, people will forget. They won't go back and, you know, through some backlog and check things out. Even as I was posting it earlier today, I was fairly convinced that most of the time I posted it, nobody clicked it, but it was there. I would rather have the entire canvas of Twitter riddled with videos about this 717 billion and have nobody click on that than not have tried to have posted at all. And that's kind of what I want um, people to understand about, you know, why I do the things that I do. I'm fully aware you have a very tiny, slim group that actually cares about any of the things that are important. But the fact that there is that small, tiny group makes me think we can get maybe one or two other people in there, um, and be accepting of the fact that the masses don't care enough to become aware of this. And ultimately, it's going to screw them a lot more than us, because when we get screwed, we can predict in advance and make accommodations. That's why when, you know, we sit here and we watch Democrats doing the same thing during the past presidential election, we can, you know, predict they're going to lose the next one, and so we don't feel that bad. While everybody else is screaming and tearing up and all the other nonsense. Envoy says the reason to bother is that maybe, just maybe, you can change one person's mind. You know, I know that's possible, and it's certainly been the case with me. Um, but I want it to be understood that it does become like, just picture this, Envoy. You go on a website, you have a video where you explain the problems with how something was voted, and you post this video roughly 30, 40, 50 times, and you see maybe one or two new views on that thing, not to mention the other 150 plus times you posted about this same topic without a link or with links to something else. Do you see where that would get tiring, or where that would make you think this is all for naught, that it's not important to people, so why should I bother attempting? Even if you, and but here's the thing, even when you feel that disillusion, you know it's important. I can't just turn off my brain and say, oh yeah, man, these politicians taking 717 billion and giving it to an agency, as opposed to the people who, half of which, who can't even afford a $1,000 emergency, is not a big deal. Let me just go back to talking about women every day, or every other day or with frequency. Let's make that the main thing now. I can't do it. Now I can feel disappointed by other people's reaction to it, but I still can't completely turn my mind off to it. And it was the same thing with the woman thing. Here you have a guy along with other guys who are not bad by default, but they are being seen as bad and horrible people because of something that's out of their control. But when you know it's out of your control, how to make somebody else feel about you, you become a lot more confident in why things are the way that they are. You don't like that they're the way that they are, but you accept it because you try to make it different. Envoy says, here's a scary question for you. Don't you think that America and the majority of countries in the world thrive when others are suffering, when poverty is present? Absolutely. You know, if the U.S. actually cared about other countries, it wouldn't be involved under Obama in 7 different wars, and under Trump still in Afghanistan after 17 years, for almost as long as I've been alive. But you have to understand that they benefit, and I've tried to explain this before. These military contractors pay out these senators and these presidents so that they can go and make money from every bomb, bullet, tank that's used. These wars literally don't need to exist. The only reason they do is because a majority of the population gets tricked by all this rhetoric about make America great again and hope and change to thinking that whoever the Democratic or Republican nominee is, things will be different. When in reality, it's the exact same behind closed doors. When that person that you like so much goes into a little back room and the guys in the suits hand him some dollars and say, "Hey, I'll give you 5 million if you keep Afghanistan going for another year," and say that there are deployments and other nonsense that makes people think that it's getting close to being over with. So yeah, if that answers your question, I think that they benefit from a lot of destruction, mayhem, and sticking their nose in business that they have no business sticking their nose in for that reason. I hope Envoy didn't go to sleep. His ex-wife is probably calling him somewhere to reconcile. The underlining patriotism is what really hurts America well. In a lot of ways, I guess it actually helps since America is the biggest country when it comes to the military and war. Oh yeah, the undying patriotism. Well, here's the thing: the U.S. If you actually sit down and look at its statistics, it's not that good of a place. It's the only it's the world superpower, but like I said before, half the population's poor, 1.5 trillion in school debt. Not to mention the debt of the overall deficit of the U.S. All these homicides, gun violence. There's loads of things you can go after it for. And I might just make that. There was a book I was thinking of writing about a year ago, and it was called The Hells of America, and there was supposed to be a catalog of every, not like a listing, like a little bullet point thing, but just a every major screwed up thing the U.S. has done just throughout the decades and various presidents and people in power. And it was designed so that you could understand while the U.S. has decent redeeming qualities, it's got problems. It's had problems for as long as it's been around. And just if those problems go away, they put new ones in. One of America's biggest selling points is the fact that anyone from anywhere in the globe can make it in America. Yeah. Hey, let me put it to you this way: when you go and you apply to a college, right? And you got B's, C's, whatever. You pass your schooling all the way up from 12th grade to like the first 2 years at some place that's free, and then they go, oh, you're gonna get into this university, but before you can come, we want 30,000. We want X amount of dollars. And when you see that, and and just think about this, you went to school, you actually got the grade, you got accepted to this college, this university, and the only reason you can't go is because of funding. That should tell you the U.S. is screwed up. That should tell you the U.S. isn't as good as people like to make it out to be. That should tell you the Make America Great Again is let America stay crappy, but let's pretend it's not happening again for another 8 years again. That's our new version of Trump's phrase. Let America stay crappy, but let's pretend it's not for another 8 years again. That's our that's our new version. We just coined a term, an expression rather. It's horrible, and the people allow it to be this way. And it only becomes an issue of them when it affects them. Like a lot of these people who don't want gun control, if something happened to their family members, would want it. Um, a lot of the people who call themselves being opposed to the free college idea are gonna wish it had happened when their son or their daughter or grandkid or whatever has to apply, gets into some school and they say, "Oh, but you can't come here unless you have 40,000." And then you're gonna think about that 717 billion that all except for 10 senators out of 100 voted to take away from you and give to the military industrial complex. And a lot of those people that are going to get screwed over by this, whether it's in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, won't even make it this far in the video. Someone will come across this video in that time and they'll see like the first couple of minutes and that'll be it. That'll be the whole story. The 1% attention span stopped them from hearing someone, give adequate criticism to a system that has proven itself to be a failure. So let's close it out by saying this. There are many people, such as myself, Envoy, um, accurately measure the best place to live. I'm sure there is. We could probably do a video on that maybe. It won't be a stream, just be a video. And there actually have been articles about that. But the way to close this out is there are people such as myself, Envoy, and others who know the significance of what's going on politically. But as we know, there are people who will call themselves trying to make it in the U.S. that will turn a deaf ear to anything of any significance not having to do with Trump and not having to do with something that's on television. This 717 billion that I keep harping on about should piss every single person in this chat room off and have them tell every single family member and start a couple of riots all across the US. But they won't do that. They'll watch a stream, they'll giggle when the guy makes the little hand motions and an occasional joke, and they'll go back to their same existence. Just like the people on Twitter, there are a lot of people on Twitter that had this story shared with them. And the closest thing you'll get from them is just writing another tweet over and over and over again. Because the attention span is small, and it's only getting smaller as years go by. Thank you, and have a nice day in a horrible society.